In the last episode, I tackled that Sony GCS1 old professional Betamovie from 1985. One that had all the bad corrosion around the audio head and so forth. We got the transport working, changed out a belt in it. That part's working, but the picture looks like crap because there's a problem in the camera section. So in this episode, I'm going to tackle the camera section, and we'll see if I have as much luck with that as I did with the recorder. Day 2 on the Betamovie. We know it records, but the picture off the camera section leaves something to be desired. I'm just going to put the screws back in to hold the chassis in place because we don't need to take the board out again. This part's working. And then we'll deal with why the camera section looks like crap. Fortunately for this, I can see the picture in the electronic viewfinder. So because I can't display this on a TV, I'm going to have to work with trying to get the picture as sharp as I can in the electronic viewfinder, which could be a challenge. But I don't know whether it's just a focus adjustment that's out or whether something's actually dripped inside the lens and is causing it to not focus. But it certainly is a very blurry picture from my point of view here. I'm setting the iris lock wide open so I can see right down into the lens with a flashlight. And I'm just going to look down and see it. It looks cloudy in the lens. Like there's, I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but if we look at the reflection inside the lens, you can see what looks like dirt and so forth inside the actual lens elements. If I zoom it, where's my zoom on here? That is always zoomed in. Let me zoom it out. Yeah, it looks like there's dirt inside the lens that's like fogging the lens itself. So I'm going to remove the lens from the CCD. I mean, it looks, I don't know if you guys can see it or not. Can you see it on the lens? It looks like mold. Little spots. There's little spots on the internal elements in the lens that's clouding the lens. I don't know if I'll be able to save this or not, but I got to pull the lens off for sure. If I let go of the iris lock, of course the iris is going to close right down, and I can still see all the dirt on the lens. You can actually see the iris in the back there. Let it open up. I'll lock it. Okay, the iris should be open now. And when I release the, oh, it's still closed. Let it open up. Pull the iris lock lever. Where the heck it was here. Okay. So I can see right into the lens. The iris is mostly open at this point. If you guys can see it, can you see the sensor in the back? And when I let go of the iris lock, you'll see it close. Now the iris closed, but we can see the debris in the lens itself. How that got in there, I guess it's just from moisture, but the lens has to come off, that's for sure. So I'll power it down, and I have to remove the camera section. I can take the viewfinder off again because I'm not going to need this at this point. I have to separate the lens from the rest of the camera. Now I might be able to open the lens up. If I take out a couple screws on the front here, I might be able to remove the lens from the front of the camera. This is the tedious part because I don't know whether this is going to work or not. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to fix the lens, but I'll certainly give it a go. See if I can clean off whatever's inside the lens. This happens to a lot of lenses. I was given a bunch of still cameras, a bunch of old Zeiss camera and stuff. A client that I've dealt with in the past unplugged the microphone. We can take the microphone right off so the wires don't get broken. But the old client from way back gave me a bunch of old cameras, and she says, "Oh, what are these cameras worth?" Well, they're not worth anything because most of them, the lenses and stuff, are shot on them. So I had to break the bad news that, well, you might have all these old classic cameras, but they're certainly not worth much money because you couldn't use them even if you wanted to, because the lenses themselves are so cloudy inside that you're not going to get a picture through them. All you're going to see is a cloudy mess like this is producing. So first I'll unbolt the camera section from the rest of the body so I can try to separate the camera and work on it separately. I think there's just a couple of screws that hold the entire camera section on, and it should unplug. Again, I've never taken one of these apart, so I could be barking up the wrong tree, but I think there's probably just a few screws that hold this whole section on, and it should just pop right off the front.
Ha ha ha, fat chance of that. I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I opened this one up, and I would not recommend anybody do this. If you want to keep your sanity, don't take apart a lens.
Off. But this battery compartment should detach, I think. Pretty sure. Actually, the whole camera should just pop off the front. The whole front of this should just unplug the power switch so it doesn't get damaged. Might as well disconnect the power leads. Don't need them connected at the moment. This whole section should lift off. Maybe you gotta take out these two screws. They hold the shield in place.
Check out all the shielding on this old camera compared to the new stuff. They were so concerned about possible interference being caused by these digital devices that they made the manufacturers jump through hoops to get certification, and that meant double and sometimes triple shielding the devices. Totally unnecessary, and a lot of these shields are not going to go back on just because I don't have time and I just could not care less about putting them on. I'll put enough on so that it works if I get it working, but the secondary and third shields, forget it.
A ton of screws that have to come out that hold this front camera section on. Once I get all the screws out, it should just lift away from the rest of the body. That's it there. Is that all of them? What else is holding this thing on? Seems like there's one more screw. This seems like there's one more screw through here that's holding this on somewhere in here. Where the heck is it? Seems like it's ready to lift off, but it just doesn't want to lift. Some of them you got to actually lift them up too, right? To do it. There might be. I might have to take off this shield here. There might be one under here.
I get a sneaking suspicion that if this unit goes back together, it's going to go back together totally different than how it came apart.
Or there's one more under here. Might be one under there as well. I think there's one down here. Of course, it looks like I got to pull the board again, because it looks to be another screw that's under here. Well, it does unclip. It's clipped in. You got to actually push it down, lift up this shield, which holds it in place, and push it down and tilt it out from the bottom, and then it does unclip from the main bracket. The problem is I want to get the lens out of here and not have to take everything else apart. So I guess I'll have to take a few brackets off of the lens, or maybe even just try taking the lens apart from here and looking at the front part of the lens, because I can see that there's screws on that. I should be able to take the front part of the lens apart and just see whether that's where the damage is on the front, or the dirt and debris is. Looks like there's 3 screws here that hold the lens, the front to the back part of the lens, so maybe I'll try just by taking that part out first and not bother with the back side of it just yet, unless I have to get there. I want to try to remove the minimum number of screws that I have to try to clean this lens up. So there's the 3 screws here. This will take it off the front part, leaving the iris and the back part of the lens still attached to the camera. I see 3 screws, so let's just remove these 3 and see what happens. Obviously, the less I have to take apart on here, the better chances of it going back together are. But I can get to the lens here, remove the front part of the lens. Should lift right out of here. Okay, I've got the zoom motor still attached. To deal with that. Be able to lift that up. Zoom motor's back here. If I take out these 2 screws, it might come out. Is that attached? Well, that's attached to a board. There's another screw through a board here that might be able to get out. Okay, let's just try removing this screw here. Yeah, there's a board in here called an MZ1. That just happens to be the name of the first mini disc recorder that Sony had, the MZ1. Okay, now that that's released, can I remove this entire assembly? Should be able to, if I can get it out of here. Ah, the fun times. Remove this other circuit board. This is the one that the zoom motor plugs into. And that should give me enough clearance, I think, to get the lens out. Maybe, maybe not. Very tight fit in here, as you can see. There we go. So now the zoom motor plugs into here. We'll just unplug that, and hopefully I can get the lens apart and get it out of here so that I can at least disassemble the lens and see how it looks. This is the back part of the lens, and it might be okay. There's the front part of the lens out. I can now take a look at the back part. I don't see any. The iris is open. This is the iris for it. Let's take a look down here and see if I see any debris inside this part of the lens. Oh yeah, there's still crap all over the back side. It's actually over the back element. If we look down through the lens here, I don't know if you guys are going to see it on camera. I got to pull the actual CCD off, because if we look down here, you can see it all? There's the iris. There's the crap on the back of the lens. See that? That's what's fogging it. That's why this looks so bad. I got to pull the CCD off of this unit. Wonderful. Just what I really wanted. Take the CCD apart. The actual front part of the lens, as you guys can see, is clear. There's no problem with this part. This is clear. It's all in the back side. So we got to dig a little deeper. This is a lot deeper than I really wanted to go into this camera. Most certainly, if this was a customer's unit, it would never have been repaired. It would have been just condemned. I wouldn't even, well, I doubt that I would have even gone as far as I did yesterday on the, does this plug into this one? This one looks like it plugs in up here. See, some of these plugs unplug, others don't. You gotta unplug them from the other side. I think this one unplugs from here. Or does it plug in on the other side as well? It might plug in. Some of these may only plug in on the other side. Ah, man. You gotta get the CCD section out with the lens on it, and then take the CCD off the back. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to come off on here, a lot of plugs, and I'd rather not undo plugs if I don't have to, even though they're all color coded. That one should unplug, or is that not going to unplug? Let's see if it unplugs from here. There, that one unplugs. That gets me that one out of the way, and this other one. I guess that one I didn't have to take out, but this one I do. I take that one out. This other one can go back as it's not necessary.
This is what we call spaghetti. All those wires, what a pain.
And I got a couple plugs on here that need to come out. This looks like this one plugs in over here. You can unplug this one from the, this is the CCD processor. CCD board, and this will be the support circuitry for the CCD. And that looks like that one unplugs from this board, or does it? One of these sides is going to unplug for sure. That comes out there. This one should go out here without breaking off wires. It's always a concern, right? The wires are going to break when you reef on them to take them out. There, that one's undone, and that one's undone, and then there should be one more that goes in. This is one up front here. This one will undo there. That should take this unit should be unplugged now. Now I can take away the lens and CCD assembly. Sort of to work on it. I gotta undo the CCD from the back, so there'll be screws in behind here. And that's the iris assembly. I don't really want to have to take that off, but if I pop off this shield on the back here, there should be a couple screws that hold the CCD imager to the lens. Right there. Those two should remove the lens from the imager, and then I can get at the lens. Hopefully I won't have to take this down any further than this. I think these are the screws. I could be way off, but I think these are the two. This is the CCD here, right across here. So we'll see the CCD, we'll see the front of the CCD on this once I get these screws out. And these are relatively long screws because they go right into the lens, they go right through the CCD and into the bracket that holds the lens on. Now the lens, I think, should pull off of here now. Whoops, don't want to take that off. I guess I could, it doesn't matter. That's just the iris assembly, it just sits on the front. Or do I have to take out these other screws? I might have to take out these ones as well. Nope, something else holding this on. I would think that the CCD would pull off now because I'm sure I got all the screws out that hold it in place, unless it's just stuck. Like it should just lift off. Okay, what's going on here?
What's going on is there's 2 more screws that hold the shield to the lens, but the shield is soldered down to the circuit board. So there's no way to get the imager out without having to unsolder the board. Of course, I haven't found that yet because I can't see the screws yet. I stared at this for probably 10 minutes before I figured out what the hell was going on. I'm taking off brackets and circuit boards trying to find
This one houses the iris motor.
how this thing's attached. But there's 2 hidden screws which I can't see because the circuit board's in the way.
I don't see anything here. It just looks like it should just pop off, but it's not. They're not designed to come apart. There are 2 screws holding here. One here and one on the other side that hold this whole assembly to the lens. And there's no way to get those screws out without taking out the solder off of the CCD and removing the circuit board. Then you can, if you do that, then you can remove the lens. I wonder if I just take out the solder around the edges here off the board, whether I can pull the whole board out with the CCD on it. But one thing for sure, the lens itself is not going to separate easily. So let's just try removing the solder here and see whether I can pull the CCD with the board off the back. I don't think so, but we'll see. So I'll undo that and we'll just see whether the board will lift out with the CCD on. I doubt that it will, but we'll see, because this, obviously this whole assembly is not going to go. It's not. Oh, there we go. That's how. Oh, there's all the. There it is, right there. There's all the crap right there on the front of the CCD on the filter. There it is. See, there it is. 2 screws in the back. I'm trying to pull this thing apart and wondering why the heck is it not coming apart? It's because they've got 2 additional screws that hold the shield onto the back of the lens. And the lens itself looks clear. The problem is right there on the front of the CCD. You can see this is the infrared cut filter. Has what looks like a film on it. Wonderful. Let's see if we can just take that apart. At this point, I don't know if this camera is going to go back together and work, you know, just with all the work that's been done on here just to get it apart. But we'll see. I'll take off this. This is the infrared cut filter. Without this, the colors would not be natural, so you can't run it without the filter. But if I take the filter out, I might be able to clean it off. It's just a piece of glass that sits in front of the CCD, and there it is. And we'll try cleaning this with something. Looks like it's delaminating is what it looks like. You see, look, the front side of it is you can see it on the front. Back side of it looks to be okay, but the front side of it looks like it's delaminating. The coating that's on there is going bad. CCD itself looks okay. Alright, let me just try cleaning this thing. I'll get some isopropanol. We'll see if we can clear that off. I don't think it's ever going to be perfect, but we'll see whether I can clean it and put it back together and get some type of a reasonable image off of it. I'm not holding my breath. This was more of just a fun project to see whether I could defog this thing. I could always put it back together without this filter in there, but then the color would never be right. Everything would look too red if it was used outside for sure. Inside it might look okay, but outside everything's going to look too red. But I think it's probably one of the internal elements on this, because this is a stacked filter. There's a bunch of pieces put together. It looks like it might be on one of the internal ones that's bad. It's not cleaning up. I'm going to put this back together without the infrared cut filter because there's no way I'm going to get that thing clean. Look at dust in here too now, so that's okay. I don't think you'll see it. If you do, so what? The camera's not really going to go back into service. I'll blow this out with duster, with the dust off before I put it together. The camera should work without the infrared cut filter. It'll just, in daylight, will not have the right color. It won't look all green like this camera if I take the infrared cut filter off, because it makes the picture go green when you turn on night shot. But if I turn off the infrared cut filter, well, I've got my digital 8, I can turn it off on it. I've got it modified so I can pull the cut filter away on my original digital 8 and operate the camera without it. And the camera still works. It's just if you try to use it outside, then everything looks all red, right? Because of the infrared light. Under like LED lights and stuff, it would look fine because there's no infrared, or very little. But it's a requirement to keep the infrared light out. But as you can see, this one here is clouded, and it's actually not on the surface. It's actually internal, right? It's delaminating inside. There's multiple layers to this, as you can see, and the optics is made like a dichroic mirror, and it's delaminating. So, and this is just from time. These filters are probably made out of organic materials, and they're just deteriorating. And this is what's going to happen to all these old cameras. And there's just no way to fix it. You're not going to find one of these filters. But the only thing you can do is take the filter out and basically turn it into a camera that doesn't have an infrared cut filter. So I'll use my compressed air. To blow out any dust. And then begin the procedure to reassemble the lens. See if I can remember how to put it back together. See, when they put these together at the factory, they screwed down the cover first, and then they put the screws in to hold the CCD to the lens. And then they soldered down the tabs on here. I was wondering why the lens wouldn't come apart. Well, that's the reason why the lens wouldn't come apart. As I was working at it, trying to pull it, I noticed that the corners here were starting to bend on the metal, and then I realized, wait a minute, it's screwed down. So maybe I'll take this off just one more time here. We'll just undo those screws and try to straighten out the metal just a little bit before I solder everything back in place. Say, I don't even know if this thing's going to work when I get it together, but we'll try. I know you guys that are watching are eager to see whether it's going to do anything or not. I'm hopeful it will produce a picture, produce a better picture than it was with the CCD all mucked up like that. So I'm just going to remove these screws. These screws are probably not even necessary. You know, they were just put on to frustrate someone trying to take it apart and fix it. So maybe I won't even bother putting these screws on because they don't really serve a purpose other than to make it impossible to take it apart without removing that board. So I'm just in the process of trying to remember what to put back together on this, getting the bracket and everything screwed back together. There's a ton of screws that I took out on this that had to come out to service this unit. So I'm just trying to get all the screws back in as best I remember where they go. Because remember, I've never taken one of these things apart to this degree anywhere, anytime. I had never worked on the Betamovie cameras ever because they were an item that we couldn't service without the test jigs. So I never did any. So I gotta remember where the heck all this stuff goes to hold this in place. All these wires have to be in the right order. I think it goes on like that. I think that piece goes on like this, and then it's maybe held in place right there by that screw. Or is it this one? Maybe it's this one down here. I'm trying to figure out which one they go on because there are only certain screws. It's got to go in a certain way. I think it's this screw right there. It holds that piece in place. Got to put things back together in the right order. The lens goes back together first before putting the circuit board on because otherwise I'll never get the circuit board back on. So I got a couple of these plastic screws to go into the lens. to hold the lens back together. Okay, I got the camera reassembled. Most of the screws anyway. I've got it reassembled enough that I can turn it on and test it. And unfortunately, we're going to have to... I'll show you the picture. I'll make a recording on here. It focuses now. No problem. Focuses at distance. No problem. Everything's good. If I stay in telephoto mode, it'll work perfect. But if I zoom it back, it goes out of focus, and basically, if you can see the little viewfinder here, it's only going to pick up stuff that's close, because that piece of the lens here that's gone all foggy, as you can see, it actually forms part of the image focusing. It's not just an infrared cut filter, it's actually part of the lens itself. And when I'm on a wide shot, well, I can focus right down to the surface of the lens, no problem. Everything's crystal clear. If I go to a telephoto shot, well, I can also focus telephoto wise. And my camera's not focusing on the screen, it's focusing on here, not on the back here. But anyway, it focuses nice and sharp. But when I zoom back, it goes blurry. We'll make a recording on this before I put the thing together, just so you guys can see what it looks like. So I'll put a tape in. And there's no microphone plugged in right now, so there won't be any sound, but I'll turn the camera around, and we'll just film some stuff around the shop here. Plug my viewfinder back in so I can see what I'm actually focused on, because I can't see what I'm doing without this plugged in. Okay, I just did a little bit of filming with it. Let's play this back and just see how bad it looks. It's too bad. It's too bad that that lens element was shot. It really is. I was hoping that it was going to be workable without it, but we'll see how bad it looks. Let's take a look at the recording. Okay, here's the recording I just started. There's no sound on this because there's no microphone plugged in, so there isn't any, but that's where I started before I picked the camera up. And as you can see, it's recording okay. The recording section, that's fixed. The color is going to be off by a country mile, just because one, I didn't color balance it, and two, the color, or the infrared cut filter, is not there. But that's only part of the problem. I haven't started to try to focus it yet. This might have even been stuff I filmed yesterday, actually. Let me just go ahead a bit here. There, this should be where I started on it today, I think. Here, okay. Here's where I started the new recording. That was the stuff I recorded yesterday. So, it's going to be all red because there's no infrared cut filter, for one. But I should be able to get the picture relatively sharp. Not zoomed in all the way. Got to be fully zoomed in, or it won't focus. This is when I was trying to shoot the little screen with the other camera. Okay, zoom all the way in. Now I can focus. Again, the color is going to be all looking red because of the lack of the infrared cut filter. But as you can see, I've got a sharp picture now. Check my tracking out on the playback machine. Yeah, we're looking okay. So that part all works. The recorder works fine. Which is more than I thought it was going to do yesterday when I started on this project. Now I got no sound here only because I didn't plug the microphone in, so there's no point. I just hear a bunch of hiss and maybe even some of the recorded audio that was on the tape from before, because I don't think it's erasing it all properly. That's pointing it across the street. Again, there's so much UV and infrared light out there that's what the infrared cut filter is for. If I were to take my DCR TRV110 with the modified cut filter, I could remove the cut filter on a switch, it would look like that outside. Everything looks kind of reddish, pinkish. Now I can zoom in on the bench. As you can see, I can get a color picture, and the color's not bad. Again, I didn't color balance. I can focus it as long as I'm on full telephoto. As soon as I start to zoom back, I lose focus. And the back focus adjustment, that's as sharp as I could make it. And that's just due to the missing last element. That, which is, as you can see, it's quite thick. This is what does the final focus. A lot of companies did that. They incorporated the infrared cut filter into the last element to stop people from taking the infrared cut filter out, so that you wouldn't get a good picture. On the newer cameras, it's the same. The DCRT RV110, it was just an infrared cut filter and nothing else, and you could remove it and use it during the day, and it would work. You could use it at the full range. But on all the modern cameras like this one, if I switch it to night shot, you'll see the infrared cut filter actually manually move. Watch. And see, then it has to refocus, because they've incorporated into this filter, they've incorporated a focusing element. That's to stop people from removing it so that they could use it as an infrared camera. When you put it in night shot, it adjusts the focus of the lens. When I turn the night shot back off, watch. Again, when the filter goes in, the focus goes out, and then the camera has to refocus. So anyway, unfortunately, this is all I can do on this camera. So I'm kind of torn whether I want to spend more time just to put this thing back in, even though it's going to record a bad picture. I might just throw this back in now that I know how to take the lens apart, and I didn't put it all back together in such a way that I couldn't take it apart again a lot easier than before. I might just throw this back in and just leave it with the bad picture, but at least being able to, well, it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. It's not going to be used, that's for sure. The camera's not going to go back in service. I just kind of wanted to get this thing working for nostalgia, and I can say, well, I did it. I got the Betamovie. I almost said Betacam. I have a Betacam, as you guys have seen. But got the Betamovie. At least we got it running. I didn't expect that it would ever work. I didn't think I'd even get the recorder working when I saw the condition of those heads, and especially that audio head with all the corrosion on it. I didn't think that this thing would ever work. And now it's working. It's just not capable of recording a picture because of that. There's not a snowball's chance in hell I'm going to find another one of these. Guaranteed. And even if I did, the chances of finding one that's not in the same state are slim to none. I have 2 other old cameras that were given to me from the same era. One is a CCD V110. It's got exactly the same problem. It's got the same filter, it's the same chip, it's got the same filter, and it looks the same as this. It's got the same problem. And I have another one that's also from the same era, which has also got the same problem. So that tells me that all of these infrared cut filters and final element for the lens, all of these from this era, they're all going to look exactly the same. It's just time. The materials they used to coat the lenses, and because there's multiple lenses, as you can see here, there's multiple lenses that have been glued together. It's either the adhesive has failed or the coating has gone bad, but whatever it is, all of these cameras of this era, which that part would be in, they're all going to be in the same condition. I mean, they're almost 40 years old, so they were never intended to last as long as they did. And while they haven't lasted, they've deteriorated, and really, there's not a heck of a lot one can do now. Anyway, I'm going to just throw this thing back together, I think, and we will call this one a day. I tried. I got it working, but unfortunately, we got a dead part. There's nothing I can do about that. I split the lens element in 2, so I can get to where the cloudiness is, which is on the internal elements here, and see if I can get this cloudiness to clear up, because it's on this piece here. See if I can clean this off. It appears to be how they bonded it together too. Is where it's come from. Extra bonus footage for those of you that stuck around, whether it gets used or not. See, I can take the camera apart pretty easy now. It only took me 2 minutes to take this apart to get to the CCD because I didn't put in the screws that hold this piece together. So I've been scrubbing away on the glass and the filter here for about 20 minutes, and I'm getting a lot of this crap off of here. I don't know how it's going to look, but it's certainly going to look a lot better than it did before, that's for sure. We'll see if I can get this any cleaner. What it appears to be is it's the adhesive that they use to glue the front, the infrared cut, and the back pieces together. I got this pretty clear now. Just rubbing off with the alcohol, just rubbing off the adhesive that they use to stick them together. That's what's deteriorated. It's the adhesive is deteriorated and gone cloudy. Which is what used to happen on projection TV lenses back in the day. They'd get foggy, and the lenses themselves would get cloudy from the adhesive that was used to glue the elements together on the tube. We used to have to change lenses because they would fail after a few years in use. People would say, well, the picture doesn't look very good, it's kind of foggy. And it was the lens itself went cloudy. The liquid, well, they used liquid cooling on them, right? And the coolant that they used between the surface of the tube and the lens clouded up. But see, this one here now looks completely clear. This is the side that goes down to the CCD, and then the other two stack on top of it. But this one here is looking clear now, so, I might actually be able to get this thing to give some type of a usable picture. You never know, right? How's the saying go? Never give up. Oh, look what time it is. I'm going to put the lens back together now and just see whether I've made any progress. See if it's any clearer than it was before taking it apart. It probably is not, but we'll see what happens. Alright, so I got the camera back together. I've got the camera kind of working. It's kind of focusing. And I've got the infrared cut filter back in place, even though it's not perfect. It's at least not all cloudy like it was before. So I think I will pop a tape in. We'll make another recording, and I'll do it without sound, of course, because I haven't put the microphone back on, but we'll do another quick recording, and we'll see how it looks. And then I'll start reassembling the unit. Fingers crossed it's going to look better than before. And I might even be able to do a white balance on it, because I do have the white lens cap. Okay, I've made a tape, a little short tape. We'll see if it records any better than the last time. Okay, so I rewound the tape a little bit too far. This is what I recorded without the infrared cut filter in, and as you can see, the camera is going extremely out of focus as soon as I zoom it back. So the next shot on the tape should be after putting the lens back together for the second time with the cut filter in place, so you guys can see, did it make an improvement? I'm keeping you guys in suspense because I already know the answer. Well, in black and white I know the answer. I don't know how it looks as far as color goes because I was looking at it in a black and white viewfinder, but it certainly is focusing now. I can tell you that much for sure. So I think that was the last shot. That's what happens if you don't have an infrared cut filter and you try to use it outside. So they're kind of important to have. Okay, this should be the end of the shot here, and the next shot that we see should be, here we go. So this is after putting the lens back together, after taking apart the filter, breaking the filter into pieces, and scraping off all the adhesive that was used to glue the three pieces of glass together. It's probably not going to be perfect because the glue is there for a reason, to keep everything in proper alignment, but considering what I started out with, I would have to say that that looks 1,000% better than it did before. And I would now say that this is a success. This camera actually works. No sound on here because no microphone yet. I'm going to finish putting this together and even glue the side cover that's broken, the tape cover that the screw holes are broken through on. But yeah, that's working. I mean, putting the white cap on to try to do a white balance because I'm getting the indicator. I think I got to stop the tape to do it. That's why it didn't do it. But anyway, I'll probably flip the switch here. Indoor, outdoor. I flipped the preset indoor, preset outdoor, and then back to the auto, which is not set. Whoop, head clogged. I don't know if it's that on the recorder or whether that was the player. Anyway, here's back to the bench. As you can see, I'm going to try to focus it here. I think the tape clogged the head a bit. Anyway, there we go. Focus in. It's still holding focus when I zoom out. And I got a bit of a head clog going on. I don't know whether it was a head clog on the camera or a head clog on the player, one of the two, but it is a very, very old tape. This tape's at least as old as this camera, which is 38 years old. Now, would I ever do this for someone else? No. If I was going to this much trouble to overhaul one of these camcorders for somebody, I would be telling them, yeah, it's going to cost you $1,000 minimum. This is a ridiculous amount of work that I put into this thing. And right now I'm sitting on an EVW 300 that I put easily as much work time-wise so far, and it still doesn't work because, well, it needs a ton of capacitors replaced in it. But these old cameras they're not worth fixing, okay? They're never, ever, 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 ever worth fixing. The only reason why I went to the extreme on this and spent 2 full days on this piece of junk is because this is a piece of history as far as home video goes, right? It's a piece of history. It's a Betamax camera that record only. They made this the smallest that they could possibly make it, and they only produced this for a few years. From 1983 was when the BMC 110 was released. 84, the BMC 220. The BMC 110 was similar to this, but it used a Vidicon tube or Satacon tube. Optical viewfinder. Then the BMC 220 added autofocus, which used an infrared autofocus system, 2 little lenses on the front and infrared emitter. The BMC 550 followed in the same time frame as this. It was the consumer version of this camera. That's 1985. 1986, the BMC 660 followed, which was, I don't know what the difference between the 550 and the 660 was, quite frankly. I believe they were the same. Both had the optical viewfinder on them. And 1987, the BMC 1000 was released. And the BMC 1000 is essentially this camera, but they changed it from Beta 2 to Beta 1 and gave it super high band capability. So it was compatible with the SL HF 1000 with the Beta 1S HB mode. Not to be confused with Beta 1S. Beta 1S is just the super beta version of Beta 1. Beta 1 super high band was 6 megahertz bandwidth. It pushed the resolution to 330 lines for Beta 1. And that was it. And then there was the ED Beta, but ED Beta was a different system. It was used a metal tape, and it was 500 lines of resolution versus 330 for a Beta 1 SHB, and 260 was the Super Beta. These were 260, either 260 or 270 lines. They're a little bit better than because it was Super Beta, and something that a lot of people don't realize is that Super Beta was really only developed for one reason. And that was to restore the image quality that was lost when Beta Hi-Fi was introduced. When they introduced Beta Hi-Fi, they put the audio carriers between the chroma and the luminance. And they had to give up some of the lower sideband on the luminance carrier, which reduced the picture quality from 250 to about 240 lines, similar to VHS. Super Beta came along by increasing the bandwidth a little bit and increasing the frequency of the carrier. They were able to restore the 200 kilohertz that they lost and add a little bit. because they went up by 400 kilohertz. They lost 200 kilohertz when Beta Hi-Fi was introduced, and they regained that and another couple hundred kilohertz, which gave it a little bit of an edge over the standard Betamax. But with Super Beta, if you record Super Beta without Hi-Fi, you can take advantage of not only the extra bandwidth that was gained with Super Beta, but you can also take advantage of the bandwidth that was lost with Beta Hi-Fi. So a mono Super Beta machine or a Super Beta Hi-Fi with the Hi-Fi turned off will produce a better picture than with the Hi-Fi turned on, and it was quite a bit better than VHS. This camera does not record Hi-Fi, it records just standard mono sound, but it also records in the high band mode. So this gives a little bit better picture. When they extended that to the BMC 1000, they bumped it up substantially and brought the quality up very, very close to the Betacam system. Beta 1 SHB was close to Betacam. Not quite as good in the color department because it was still a composite system versus a component system, which Betacam was. But it was the last kick in the can for consumer beta. Sony dropped all their cameras at that point and focused on Video 8 and High 8 for good reason, because Video 8 and High 8, especially High 8, pushed the quality for analog recording on home video to 400 lines of resolution, and the color under frequency was 729 kilohertz, or sorry, 733 kilohertz versus VHS and Super VHS's 629. So High 8 had quite the advantage in terms of the color resolution over the other formats, even over 3/4 inch, which also, like Beta, used 688 kilohertz for the color under. Anyway, I'm going to throw this thing together. Camera slowly going back together. The screws going in to hold all the different pieces in place. Remember which screws go where and which color screws. There's different colors. I guess the colors don't really matter. A white screw or a black screw, right? Doesn't really matter what I put in as long as I get the screw in place first. Lots of fun. Gotta get the eject button in there as well. As you can see, it's getting back together. We're going to put the power switch back in. That just snapped in like that. And there's a screw that holds it in from the back side. Yeah, there'll be a few screws left over on this because I didn't put some of the shielding in that was in originally. There's no point. There's a lot of shields that things were double and triple shielded that are just not required, right? They did it to satisfy the FCC because the FCC was concerned that all these digital devices were going to cause interference to a transistor radio. I don't think that too many people worry about that anymore. I've got all the main shields on, I just didn't put some of them on. Like I didn't put the double shielding on here, I just couldn't be bothered. Just extra parts as far as I'm concerned. So I'll plug the power switch back in, put the side panel on, and give it a test. See, other than the door that's broken on this unit, this is probably one of the best conditions of a Betamovie you're going to find, because it was always kept in its protective case. It never left the case, so it was always kept in this case. That's why it's in such good shape cosmetically. It's in really good shape, other than the broken door, which is just plastic fatigue, right? Okay, let me get the final screws in here so that I can test it. So I've got it back together, no worse for wear. Now I know why these front screws broke, because the little plastic tabs that hold the top of this in broke off. So then when it opened, when it ejected, this not being attached allowed the screws to break free. The camera is back together. It's producing a picture on the viewfinder. I've made up a power cable. Yeah, I've used some black tape to cover up some holes in the plastic because there's a few pieces were missing, just because, well, the camera itself is so bloody old that the plastic is so brittle that, especially the black plastic, all you gotta do is look at it and it cracks. Literally, I mean, I had pieces breaking in my hands when I was putting it back together. Just putting in the screws and a piece of plastic broke. I'm gonna make a test recording, and we'll see how this thing records. As you can see, I made a power cable so I can power it up, put it up on my shoulder, and do some recording. Let's try it out. All right, so let's rewind the tape and see what's on it.
Got the white balance. It's all back together. I think that work on a table app. It was
Tracking control.
I can record a table app. Right. All right. Well, I'm working on this beta movie because I don't want to work on it. I don't want to work on it. You can give me what to fix. 3 pieces left.
Well,
So this was a Scotch tape, a back-coated tape, and I think it's slipping a bit. So I'll try the Sony tape and see how it looks.
Works and sounds.
sounds like the sound is not erasing properly what was there before. But the picture's fine, and if it was recorded on blank tape, I'm sure it would be fine.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. How was that sound on this one?
Yeah, it's
The beta machine.
well, it's recording sound. It's recording picture. The picture looks okay. That's an old tape. To say I can hear some print through from the original audio. So obviously the erase head is not working as well as it probably should.
There's the other tape that I had tried. Some of these back-coated tapes had a tendency to slip on the pinch roller. The idea was it was to provide better friction, but in reality, they had a tendency to slip. And this pinch roller is not in good shape, as we saw from the prior video.
So the Betamovie does not have an audio erase head. It only had a full erase head, and maybe the erase signal for the full erase head is a little bit low. It's not affecting the erasing of the picture, or it might be the erase head is not quite fully aligned with the tape, and it's just missing a bit of the audio. Because certainly it is erasing, because if not, you'd see a lot of flashing colors under the picture from the previous video track, and they're not there. But saying that, it doesn't appear to be that it is fully erasing the audio track from a previous recording. I'm not going to go any further and try to find that problem, because it could be partly because that audio head is in bad shape because of all the crap that was on it. More than likely it is. The audio head itself is just not giving a really good strong signal to the tape, just due to the fact that it had all that corrosion on it. It is working. The camera is working. It's not a camera that's going to get used, okay? That's the thing, is this is not something that is going to be put in service and be used to make videos. I don't have any batteries for it either. I just made up a power cord to plug it in and power it up with my 9.6 volt power supply. It was more of, how do we get this thing going? And I'm bored. I got nothing to do. Well, I have stuff to do. It's just, I have paid work to do. It's just stuff I'd rather not work on. I got a few things here that I got to get moving on, but since I had this thing down to show it to somebody, I figured I would see if I could at least get it working, and I think I've accomplished that. And now you've learned a few things about the old lenses on these old cameras and why they look foggy, and where the problem is going to be. It's going to be on that filter, which you're going to have to take out and polish the thing. And I spent more time polishing that damn lens. I had to break it into pieces, first of all, because it's multiple pieces glued together. The problem is where the infrared cut filter is. That's the green element, which is the second one back. That, where it's glued together, it's the glue itself over the years deteriorates and fogs. And that's what needs to come apart to fix that problem. Anyway, this one's fixed as far as it's going to get fixed. If I were to put a brand new tape in with nothing on it, or bulk erase a tape and use that, the sound would be okay. A little bit on the low side, but again, the audio head on this thing is, as you saw in the previous video, is in really rough shape, and I'm surprised that it even works at all. Saying that, this is a rare piece. This particular one, this model, was quite rare. Say this one's in remarkably good condition because it's always been kept in a case. Like, it's even got a counter on it to show you how much we've recorded. And it can burn the tape. It can burn the time and date onto the tape or display the counter. Anyway, GCS1 Sony Super Betamovie. This was the industrial / professional version of the consumer Betamovie from 1985. Definitely an old vintage piece. Going to go back into my collection. Say not going to use it, but I'm just going to hang on to it just for nostalgia because it's such a unique piece, and it definitely has a place in the history of home video as being the first camcorder format. Prior to the Betamovies, and it wasn't this one, it was the BMC 110 that was out 2 years before this in 1983. But prior to the Betamovie, everybody had to carry around two pieces of equipment. This one here gave you a one-piece camcorder and basically paved the way for the professional camcorder market, because it was this type of an idea and design that paved the way for Betacam. And Betacam was the standard in broadcast until the end of tape. And even at that, when they went to discs, it was still based on the same type of design. But the entire time broadcast, right from I think it was 1984 or 85 when Betacam was first introduced. The first one I saw was in 1986 at Expo 86. The TV stations were running around with this new big heavy camera, and they were showing it off, and they were letting people very carefully pick them up at the pavilion. They had one on, and they said, "Hey, you want to pick it up?" And be very careful. And the thing weighed like 30 or 25 pounds. It wasn't light. It was heavy, but it was a lot lighter than what they had used in the past when they had to carry around a separate camera and have a sound man carrying around the recorder. Anyway, now you've seen the lens come apart. I hope to never do one of these ever again. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.